Well, it is all Q Country roads around here. So shout out to you West Virginia fans, by the way, who like Charles Wesley Godwin. Love Charles Wesley Godwin over here. And we are queuing country roads, just like he talks about in his Family Ties album. How's everybody doing here? I'm Colin Bashnagel, your host here. This is not a country music channel for anybody who's questioning what am I talking about. This is indeed about college football. And we're going to be talking about Rich Rodriguez trying to revamp and revitalize the West Virginia Mountaineers after Neil Brown did end up leaving him a little bit of a mess, some might say. Maybe not a mess, but he definitely is taking over a situation that's not ideal. A lot of new players coming in. So what happened last year, we're going to touch on it, but keep in mind that that's not going to take major importance. If you like the video, make sure you like the video. If you want more college football content like this, make sure you subscribe, and you can always comment down below if you got anything to say about West Virginia or anything college football related, or if you want to see your team up next. We go in order by conference. We go ACC to Big 12 to Big 10 to SEC with Notre Dame added to the ACC. You will be queued up if you request your team down below. Finally, go over and check out my TikTok. It's a fun community. You guys would enjoy it a lot. Let's talk about the 2024 West Virginia team. There were some pieces that West Virginia fans were very high on, and in particular on the offensive side of the football. Quarterback Eric Green was viewed as this baller that would go out there and play and be an absolute gamer with two running backs in kind of a more lightning and thunder type of approach, though I do believe lightning did have some thunder last year. You got Jaheim White, CJ Donaldson. Well, two of those guys, by the way, gone. But how that played out last year with a little bit more expectation within not only the media circles that I've been around, but the West Virginia fans in general expected something just a tick more than what Neil Brown delivered last year. And you kind of saw it in disappointing fashion from bookends, how the season started to how the season ended. The season started with a loss at home to Penn State, where they clearly flexed their muscle on you. And they also were able to do it off of getting a lightning delay to kind of put a little bit of insult to injury right there. And then at the end of the season, losing to Texas Tech the way they did, losing in the bowl game, not being able to stop Memphis, is a pretty tough season and a way to end. Now, they had good moments. I thought the win at Arizona was a really good moment for them. But the loss at Pitt probably is the one that stings the most for West Virginia fans. They get them back at home. They hope to get back at them this upcoming season. When you're talking about this 2025 West Virginia roster, you got to start with talking about all the transfers that have been brought in. And I have an extensive list of transfers right here when it comes to the West Virginia Mountaineers. But I do want to talk about, just real quick, the roster that Rich Rod has put together as far as what's going to be at the top end, and then some of the development players below. And some of the returning production, you can't help but to bring up Jaheim White, one of the two guys coming from that 1-2 punch that we talked about a year ago. I think that Jaheim White really showed that he can be a great running back. I think Dior Hubbard could be a very good complement. So, I think the loss of CJ Donaldson is definitely important, but I don't think it is devastating for West Virginia. I honestly think a guy like Traylon Ray might be a little bit more devastating. Now, Jaden Bray is back for another year. So is Rodney Gallagher. They're really good players. They went to the transfer portal. Rich Rod brought Cam Vaughn with him, a really good wide receiver from Jack State with him, as well as Eastern Michigan transfer Oren Singleton Jr. I'm looking for Oren Singleton Jr. to be that MAC 2 Power 4 conference player that can really produce at a pretty high level here. Now, when you're talking about the offensive line too, you got a couple of transfers in there. Xavier Bosley is back at the left tackle position. Landon Livingston comes in at center. And that's great and all, but you bring in guys that, are just littered with transfer history. And this is kind of the piecing together that Rich Rod needs to do. And it's a piecing together of that offensive line right now, and it's a piecing together in different spots. You're going to have a lot of transfers fill in some spots and a lot of other guys fill in some spots, you might be able to see if one of the backup quarterbacks are more of a scheme fit and a style fit to Rich Rodriguez, such as Jalen Henderson coming in from Texas A&M. Max Brown, by the way, coming in from Charlotte. He was originally Florida. He's got a lot of talent there. And then, of course, the true freshman, Scotty Fox. Shout out again to the state of Ohio for him. But when you're talking about this offense, you're going to have some guys who have been there for a little while, but there's also going to be a lot of brand new spots opened up there for transfers or younger players to see the field. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the same could be said about the secondary. I think the secondary is really piecing together through transfers. And I do think losing a guy like Josiah Trotter in the front six is very hurtful, but you still got guys that are back. Reed Carrico is back for his second year in the program, and he showed to be a pretty solid player for them last year, and he's ready to start at that micro role for this defense. Curtis Jones Jr., by the way, really good player as a freshman. Didn't really get too much run, but, you saw the flashes. We'll see if he can step into a major starting role here. Hammond Russell, the big guy in the middle. I'm excited to see what this defense is going to be made of, because it's interesting to me that you have more experience in the front level as far as continuity and scheme fit. Being at West Virginia for a little bit and being around each other is going to matter. And we'll see how schematically it works with defensive coordinator Zach Alley over there. So overall, when you're talking about this West Virginia team, man, I got to go straight to the schedule breakdown. When you're looking at the schedule that West Virginia has coming up for this year, talking about their strengths and weaknesses, I think they're going to be decent at wide receiver, but I think they're still going to lean on the run game with Jaheim White and Dior Hubbard, and it's all going to depend on whether or not that offensive line can gel. Defensively, again, I think they're going to be able to defend the run decently well, and I also think that they're going to be able to get after the quarterback a little bit, but we got to see how that secondary gels together. But the one thing I do like about the secondary for West Virginia is a lot of those guys have played a lot of football. They start out with Robert Morris in a weird road game at Ohio. It's not a far trip from Morgantown to Athens. I think that will be fun to see, I guess, but generally speaking, nobody's going to be really watching that game other than people breaking down the game or West Virginia fans alike. Pittsburgh, though, you welcome him into town this year. That's going to be fun. So glad we got this game back. But, when I did the Pittsburgh schedule yesterday, I did the Pittsburgh video. They had a bye week after this rivalry game to kind of recuperate regardless on what the result was. West Virginia doesn't get that luxury. They got to go immediately on the road to Kansas to play Jalen Daniels in that squad. They got to play Utah right after that, and then at BYU. Pretty tough way to start the conference play when you're talking about playing those three games right on the heels of the Pittsburgh game, the biggest game, you would argue, of the West Virginia regular season. Just to that fan base, I definitely think it's the biggest game out there. After the bye week playing at UCF, I think if there's a time to get at UCF, there's a lot of situations here where West Virginia is going to be traveling far off of not like a short week. Going to BYU is going to be really tough. For example, they played them on a Friday night after playing Utah at home. At UCF, you get that off the bye, you get to recover, recuperate, and understand what UCF is doing there. TCU, fun to welcome them back into home, but this is another travel spot that I'm talking about. Tough travel spot going to Houston, then back to West Virginia to play against Colorado, then all the way out to Tempe, Arizona to play Arizona State before getting a bye before their final game of the year against Texas Tech. So we're going to get straight into the schedule predictions here. We're going to rip off the Band-Aid, tell you West Virginia fans what I think they're going to do. And I'm going to always say this with a caveat, like I'm not perfect with the predictions. I can be way off at the end of the year. And also the thing that makes West Virginia especially different is teams like West Virginia with first-year coaching staffs have so much roster turnover, you don't really know how it's going to gel. So me predicting how it's going to gel on a positive or negative side, it's kind of hard to read at the end of the day. They could be way better or way worse than I predict. We're going to start with 2 wins against Robert Morris and Ohio. And for those of you that Watched the Pitt video yesterday. No spoilers here. I got them losing at home to Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be a great game, but I think Eli Holstein is going to be able to make just one or two plays that Nico Martial cannot make. And I think that that's going to be a big deal for this game. The Pitt Panthers are going to be able to move on. But thankfully for West Virginia, I think despite the quick road trip, they have a big bounce back spot here against Kansas, a team, by the way, that I think people are going to be maybe a tick too high on just because of the fact that Jalen Daniels is back. They still lost a ton. I mean, they were a returning production darling from a year ago. They aren't that anymore. And Utah, on the other hand, I am actually pretty high on Utah. I'm high on what they have coming in with Jason Beck and having Devin Dampier play at the quarterback spot. Like, I want to see that all kind of materialize, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and that's a tough road trip, and that's when the experience of the secondary, I think, will be a little bit overwhelming for a player like Devin Dampier. Before the bye, I almost said off the bye and kind of skipped ahead. At BYU is a very tough game. They're going to be very stingy on defense, and you see Jake Retzlaff over here making plays, and they're going to be tough on both lines of scrimmage. Yeah, I don't see how they go across the country, play at Provo on a Friday night, and pull out a victory, okay? Those Mormons get kind of crazy out there. You know, no hate, by the way, to my Mormon brethren out there. But, yeah, this BYU team is, you know, they're going to be the real deal this year in the Big 12, and they're going to expect to contend for a championship. And I think it's going to be very tough to go out to LaVell Edwards Stadium to beat BYU on the road on a Friday night. Off of the bye, though, they're going to Orlando, Florida, maybe get a little bit of nice weather in October that you're not necessarily getting at home. I think you get a win here because I really think that this is going to take a little bit of a time for the identity shift to really happen there at UCF. I think they're in for a long, rough year. We're going to talk about them in a different video, but I got West Virginia winning that game. TCU now, they're a very, very tough team. TCU, don't sleep on them, man. I know a lot of people are going to talk about how they lost Jack Bash and Savion Williams, but Josh Hoover is a man. He's a dog out there. They can run the football a little bit. They're playing pretty solid defense, and I trust in Sonny Dykes, by the way, who has shown that he can be a high-level coach. I think this TCU team is going to be pretty tough, so we're going to give an L here to West Virginia at home against TCU, making them now 5-3. Not too shabby of a record, but I do have them losing on the road at Houston. If there's a time to catch Houston, it's not in November. West Virginia fans are going to hate this pick, but Houston's on the right track. Connor Wakeman starting at quarterback to start the year at the very least in Willie Fritz's system. He brought in a little bit more talent. There's a little bit more of a culture taking place there. And by the way, Houston, they didn't close out the year very poorly. They showed a lot of improvement throughout the year. I think this will be a tough road trip, one that West Virginia overlooks. I think they fall in this ball game. But I do think they get bowl eligible playing Deion Sanders in Colorado at home. That is a tough travel spot. Colorado, probably a more complete team, but they don't have any players that can take over a game anymore. And that's a thing that's kind of got to get proven a little bit. You got Caden Salter probably going to start at quarterback, but at this point, if Colorado has 2 or 3 losses, I think that Deion Sanders and company will thrust a true freshman quarterback in Juju Lewis onto the field when he's not ready. I could see that very well happening. And if West Virginia and that experienced secondary is going up against a true freshman in Juju Lewis, lights out. It's over. I got West Virginia improving to 6-4 before going in to Tempe, Arizona to play Arizona State, the defending Big 12 champs, college football playoff appearance a year ago, only lost in overtime to a team in Texas that gave Ohio State the national champions. Arguably the best game of the playoff run. I think Arizona State gets the job done. You cannot ignore all the production that Arizona State brings back from last year. They're bringing back a lot on defense, which, by the way, the defense got progressively better and better and better throughout the year. They bring back Sam Levitt, a steady hand quarterback who has a lot of confidence coming into the season. They bring back good receivers as well. Malik McLean, Xavier Gilreath. They also bring back, by the way, Jordan Tyson, who didn't suit up in the Big 12 championship or college football playoff game. Arizona State, they're going to be a really tough team this year. Don't sleep on them. That knocks West Virginia down to 6-5. And this last game off the bye, with it being off the bye, like I was so back and forth on this game. I really, really like Texas Tech this year, but I think that this is a really tough trip to go to Morgantown late in the year and get a big dub. But I trust that Joey McGuire is going to do it with everything on the line. West Virginia, I think you're a year away. This is not a slight on Rich Rod. This is not a slight on West Virginia. I love the fact that Rich Rod is back. I am rooting for West Virginia. I hope they're way better than 6-6, but 6-6 is the only record that I can give you right now at the end of the day. So 6-6, 4-5 in conference play is what I have West Virginia listed at. I love the Mountaineers, just like a little sweet spot in my heart. I love West Virginia fans. So I hope I'm wrong. And I'm trying to be objective here and not let any sort of bias impact this. And it's not like I'm a West Virginia fan, but I do have a sweet spot for the Mountaineers. And I want to see them have success. And I especially want to see them have success with Rich Rod. So shout out to you out there, RJ. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.